Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, show number 277. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. Still a little bit under the weather, my friends, I regret to tell you. Getting there, getting better, but the old voice has taken a bit of a hammering. Can't quite get it better at the moment. Still, that shouldn't stop me bringing you this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone. We're going to kick off with a report which can be found at our website, the Australian Skeptics website, that is, www.skeptics.com.au. The story of Dr. Ken Harvey resigning from La Trobe University over the deal they have done with the Swiss Wellness Vitamin Company. Dr. Ken Harvey is well known to skeptics, and soon we'll be hearing about he really stood on his principles and made what many consider to be the right move in resigning from the university over this issue. We'll hear more about that in a report coming up at the top of the show. And then after the break, it's Maynard's spooky action. Maynard's going to be chatting to Rob Byrne from Rotary, all about the End Polio Now campaign. Now, Rob Byrne was a recent guest at Skeptics in the Pub, and what an entertaining and interesting, thought-provoking talk he gave about Rotary's efforts around the world to rid the world of polio. Very encouraging, and what a great talk it was. So we'll be hearing from Rob Byrne with Maynard. Then Maynard chats to all sorts of people at the pub, posing a couple of questions. One is, how do people think they would go if they had to do a Bill Nye? In other words, debate creationists. Also, he asks, what would it take you to leave your job on a matter of principles? And speaking of the Ken Ham Bill Nye debate just the other day, a few days ago, I, like many, was, to be honest, slightly worried about that. It's not a good idea to debate creationists. I think it's generally held that it's not a good idea. I think, however, despite concerns, I think Bill Nye did a pretty good job, considering. I don't know if you had a chance to see that debate yet. It goes on for quite a long time. I know it's available on YouTube. It's very easy to find. If you just Google Bill Nye Ken Ham, you'll find it. And I think the general consensus out there is that Bill Nye did an okay job, whereas many in the past have had difficulty in debating creationists for many reasons, not at least being things like the Gish Gallop, where creationists will present so many so-called facts it's impossible to refute them all. And this was named after a very famous creationist who came to Australia many years ago, Duane T. Gish, who used to employ this practice. Well, if I don't stop talking soon, I think my voice will run out altogether. So apologies for the rough voice in my reports this week, and thank you for Maynard for stepping in and helping me out later on in the show with Maynard's spooky action. So with that being said, it's time to run downstairs, look for the chicken soup, nah. Soda water, root beer, yeah. Send your suggestions on a postcard. While you're doing that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. From the website of Australian Skeptics, www.skeptics.com.au. Ken Harvey quits over Swisse-La Trobe deal, rejected by other unis. Published on Tuesday, February 4th, 2014. And since including this update, The proposed deal between Swiss Wellness and La Trobe University that led to serial campaigner Dr. Ken Harvey to resign his position as adjunct professor at the Uni's School of Public Health has apparently run the gamut of several universities over a lengthy period of time before finally being taken up by La Trobe. Bond University on the Queensland Gold Coast was approached about the possible venture in September 2012, before the university rejected it. At least 2 other universities were also approached and the offer rejected. Harvey's decision has been supported by academics around Australia, as well as the Friends of Science in Medicine and the Consumers Health Forum of Australia organisations. Mark Metherall, a spokesman for the Consumer Health Forum, said that La Trobe, in describing Swisse as Victoria's leading global wellness company, quote, appears to have fallen for the company's celebrity-backed marketing pitch. Such a statement exposes the university as credulous and naive, end quote. At La Trobe, Swisse will contribute $15 million to the university over 6 years as a founding partner of a Complementary Medicine Evidence Centre, CMEC. Professor Keith Nugent, Deputy Vice-Chancellor Research for La Trobe, said in an announcement late in January that, quote, once the CMEC is established, Swisse will continue to have its products undergo rigorous and independent scientific assessment, end quote. Harvey, however, has cast doubt on the company's commitment to such assessment. Quote, Swisse is well known for prioritising the marketing of its products, especially by the use of celebrities, over their scientific assessment, he told the university's vice-chancellor in his letter of resignation. Quote, indeed, many of the claims Swisse has made about their products have been judged to have breached the Therapeutics Goods Administration Code by the Independent Complaint Resolution Panel, CRP, end quote. Harvey said that, quote, many advertisements claim that Swisse products were proven, clinically proven, proven results, scientifically proven, clinically tested with proven results, proven in clinical trials. However, the CRP, quote, noted that most of the studies Swisse used to support these claims were weak, in that they were conducted on a small number of patients in narrowly defined groups, such as elderly men, that are not representative of the general adult population to whom the panel considered the television advertisements were addressed. None of the 8 studies cited supported representations that Swisse products were clinically proven to improve stamina, energy, general health and well-being, or relative fatigue, tiredness or stress in the general adult population. Quote, I certainly support more research into the efficacy of complementary medicines, end quote, Harvey said in his letter, quote, but in my view it is crucial that the design, assessment and funding of such research be at arm's length from a particular company and overseen by an independent body such as the ARC and or NHMRC, end quote. He pointed out that industry-sponsored research were more likely to report positive outcomes than were trials funded by other sources. Quote, in addition, contract research for industry can be specifically designed to provide a particular result. For example, performing a battery of 60 or more tests of mental functioning while administrating a multivitamin preparation is likely to find that 1 or 2 tests will show statistical significance due to random chance, end quote. He suggested that, quote, one appropriate mechanism for industry to assist such research would be for several companies to partner with 1 or more universities in the ARC linkage grants submission, end quote. Quote, I am concerned that the partnership of La Trobe University with Swisse Wellness Proprietary Limited involves a fundamental conflict of interest both for the proposed CMEC and the staff involved. In addition, I am concerned that this arrangement will impact on the reputation of the university given the track record of Swisse, end quote. He added that a large number of his colleagues had raised questions about the appropriateness of his ongoing association with La Trobe University given the arrangements with Swisse. Quote, "Taking all the above into account, I hereby confirm my resignation as adjunct associate professor." End quote. Harvey is well known to skeptics for his ongoing battle both through the Therapeutics Goods Administration over claims made by alt-med companies in their advertising and promotional material. His complaints have all been upheld upon investigation. In particular, he is known for his fight against the SensorSlim company for its claimed weight loss product. SensorSlim notoriously sued Harvey in what is generally regarded as a slap suit designed to keep him quiet. Harvey fought back with financial assistance from the skeptical community via a fundraising effort initiated by Australian skeptics. He won the case, but, despite a court ruling, his costs have not been recovered from SensorSlim. Ken Harvey was the winner of the Australian Skeptics Thornet Award in 2011 and was made a life member of Australian Skeptics in November 2013. And that report can be found at www.skeptics.com.au.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science you need to know. At the Sochi Winter Olympics, athletes will compete on a mountain 600 metres above sea level. By Winter Olympic standards, it's not that big, but they've still been training in special ways to get used to the altitude. Altitude training became really big after the Mexico City Olympics in 1968. They happened at an altitude of 2,400 metres, and athletes who trained to deal with the height really dominated, breaking all kinds of records. Atmospheric pressure decreases at high altitudes, which basically means that the air becomes thinner. The molecules are spaced further apart, meaning that every breath you take contains less oxygen. This means that your body has to work a lot harder to get the same amount of oxygen to all your muscles and organs. Researchers estimate that you work 20% harder at 3,000 metres altitude as your heart rate increases and you breathe faster. So it's no surprise that athletes who are climatised to this elevation perform better. There are a couple of different ways that you can train for competing at high altitude. One famous study tested 3 different training regimes. The first regime was train low, live high, where athletes trained at a normal elevation but slept and lived at high altitude. The second group trained and lived at high altitudes, while the last group lived and trained at a normal level. They were basically the control group. The athletes in the high altitude regimes both showed an increase in red blood cells to carry more oxygen around their bodies. But only the train low, live high group improved their running times. Many sporting facilities, like the Australian Institute of Sport, have special low oxygen homes where athletes can live and sleep. You're listening to A Week in Science from RiAus. And now, 4 winter sports science facts. Winter athletes inhale up to 100 litres per minute of cold air and have a higher prevalence of respiratory problems, including asthma. A downside of altitude training is that athletes sleep worse and may have a weakened immune system. Aerodynamics is hugely important in many winter sports. Ski jumpers hold their bodies at precise angles to generate lift. Cross-country skiing is one of the most energy-intensive sports, with skiers displaying some of the highest oxygen capacities, VO2 max, ever recorded. That's it for this week in science. For more information about winter sports science, check out our website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. I'm Kieran Groom, and we'll catch you next week.
Hello there, this is Dusty Springfield, and it's some hideous hour of the morning in England, and I really resent Maynard calling me at this time of the morning. I've had 8 cups of coffee and I feel really lousy, and I'm told he's a real wally, and I tell you, I have to agree with that. I've only known him for 8 minutes, and he strikes me as being the biggest wally I've ever known in my life. But anyway, you better listen to him because he plays good records.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Not at all.
Look, I'm here in an alcove at Skeptics in the Pub, Sydney, here with Rob. Rob, little boy, you've got a huge Rotarian name tag there. What's it say?
It says Rob Byrne, and I'm from the Rotary Club of Turramurra, and I'm the polio chair for this part of Sydney.
Now, was it a big competition to get that chair? Was it a tough one? I mean, did a lot of people want to really head that, or have you done that for years and you're the guy who's the go-to guy?
I basically didn't step back fast enough, Maynard, yeah.
and look, you were saying how Rotarians are into eliminating polio.
Correct.
And you had an influence of that early in your childhood. Why is that one disease the one they picked?
Well, there's a long history to that, and it's one which I've been researching lately. And basically, I think the situation was back in the late 70s, we were pretty pleased with the fact that smallpox had been eradicated. And there was a lot of thought about, well, which disease might be next? And you look at the characteristics of polio, which is a virus-borne disease which only exists in humans, no other animals, and it is a disease which absolutely can be eradicated provided we have the right tools, and we do. We have the right tools. They were invented back in the 50s in the form of vaccines. And so these vaccines have been unbelievably effective. To that point, they were unbelievably effective in the West. And Rotary, which is an organisation which believes in taking care of individuals in the communities, felt we should have that same sort of success in other countries which can't really afford the vaccines like we can. So Rotary initiated a project initially in the Philippines, actually, and that was in the late 70s, and then in the mid-80s started a worldwide push called Polio Plus. And then in 1988 we were joined by the World Health Organization and others, and it's become by far the biggest public health project the world has ever seen.
And where does it come from? It's carried through the human digestive system, and most people carry it without knowing it. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. But the virus usually just passes harmlessly through the system. That's the good news. Only about 1 in 200 people who have the virus in their system are paralysed by the virus. However, all of those 200 people are contagious. They don't know that they've got the virus. They have no way of knowing they've got the virus, but they are contagious, just as contagious as the person who's been paralysed. So it's a tough disease to get rid of because of that factor.
And a major factor is people not washing their hands too. And I imagine ever since the 50s there's been a huge wash your hands campaign worldwide.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a baby of the 50s, and I remember very, very clearly my mother just being very emphatic about washing your hands. And that is the vector, as they say. That's how the disease is transmitted from one person to another. Dirty hands.
It must drive you crazy when you go to a pub, like we all do, and you see so many guys walking out without washing their hands. You feel like, what's going on?
Hello? Yeah. Well, I got to say, it is primarily fecal matter, rather.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yes, which is the issue. But, yes, that is a huge concern, and it's something which we need to lift our game on.
Yep. So, guys, lift your game. And women, I know some of you aren't washing your hand either. Yeah? You don't get away scot-free. So what is the big initiative? What would be the silver bullet, the magic bullet that would wipe out polio?
Well, the thing which we really, really need is more funding. We are short on funds to finish the job. And we're talking vast amounts of money that have been spent already, about $10 billion. And over the next 6 years, we need to spend another 5. So it's a vast amount of money we need to find, and basically every penny helps.
You've got a huge problem with vaccination in Afghanistan, for example, where aid workers that are on vaccination programs are actually being killed.
Yes, in Pakistan, it's a tragedy. We call them the polio heroes. These are the people who voluntarily go out risking their lives because there are some misguided people out there who believe that vaccination is some sort of a demonic sort of a...
Do they think it's a tool of the West? Is that the way it comes across? Or is it a religious thing?
It's a little bit of both. A tool of the West and a tool of the devil. I mean, you can sort of understand this. There are people who don't have the same sort of educational opportunities, but we are getting to those people. We sit down with them, we explain how much progress that we've made, we explain why the disease has gone away in other areas and why their children are still getting paralysed, and the penny drops consistently, one area after another, where we go and talk to them. The penny drops, and the religious leaders very frequently turn into our biggest advocates. So, that is a big turnaround in most cases.
And you're here talking to us tonight. What can we do on the local level?
Well, I think that, polio is a disease which is very much invisible these days. We haven't seen a case.
Yeah, in Australia, when was the last case?
Oh, back in the 90s, back into the 90s, and so when a disease is invisible like polio is now, people really don't even know what it is. It's difficult to maintain the momentum in terms of the funding. But there's people like me who had friends who were paralysed by this disease who remember just how hideous this disease is and how cruel it is to the people who are, paralysed either in their limbs or in their lungs, or lose the ability even to swallow. It's a cruel disease, and the bad news is that the World Health Organization has said categorically that if we drop the ball now with vaccination, we will go back to the bad old days with hundreds of thousands of kids once again getting polio. And frankly, it's just too awful a thought to contemplate.
And look, so if you get the chance, basically donate.
Donate, yes, and talk about how important it is.
And now, can you see yourself getting out there and running a chocolate wheel on the back of a truck in Pakistan at some stage? It happens all the time around Newcastle, where I am. Well, you guys should do that.
I would love to get to Pakistan or Nigeria or somewhere like that and play my part on the ground. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. If you haven't seen a Rotarian chocolate wheel on a Saturday afternoon at a school fete, it's a wonderful thing.
It is a thing of wonder, isn't it?
It's an Australian legendary sight.
Yes, indeed.
Look, Rob Byrne, thank you for your time tonight, and good luck in your fight. And like I say, people, donate.
Thank you very much. And by the way, Rotary.org is the place to go.
Okay, Joe Benhamu, we're here. Hey, did you get my... First of all, before we tell... I've been on the case of the Lucas machine, which I think is a very exciting device, and I sent you an email about that. What did you think about that?
Did you?
I sent you an email about the Lucas machine, which is the mechanical chest compression device used by emergency services, sometimes in the States, but through England. Yeah, and I've spoken to a few emergency departments in Australia, and they feel that they don't need it because they've got people that can do that, and that's certainly true, and the health budget is something you don't want to stretch too much. What do you feel about a mechanical chest compression device?
Well, people aren't very good at giving chest compressions because they're extremely tiring, and if you can't sing the Bee Gees song Staying Alive in your head and keep up the pace of 100 beats per minute, well, we all know that, well, we don't all know, but chest compressions are now known to be the most effective way of giving CPR. So I figure if you have a chest compression device that could do that, well, that could be pretty good. But my concern is, how are you going to have it available quickly enough and put it in place? I mean, I haven't seen the device.
Oh, right.
So the time that you're taking to sort of connect this thing up and you're losing valuable compression time.
Yeah. Well, where I have seen it, and I want to point listeners to this, is there's a few demonstrations online in the UK. I think there isn't an Australian distributor on it, and they show it, but emergency services have it. I imagine if it was a two-person paramedic team, if one person was doing some compressions while the other person put it in place.
How does it work? Well, what does it actually look like? Because if I can imagine it.
Okay, it looks like a semicircle that goes around the patient, and underneath it, sometimes you can strap the patient's arms to the side of it so they don't flail around and get in the way. And it's like a plunger that goes down on the chest. Yep, yeah. And I think it also has some incubation as well.
That sounds like it actually worked pretty well, to be honest.
And what got my attention was that I was listening to a near-death experience chat, actually, and they were saying that, and this is a case where a clear case for this use would be someone wasn't feeling well, they went into the emergency room at a hospital, they were 40-year-old male, and they had a heart attack in the emergency room. They put them on this device for 3 hours. Now, immediately I'm thinking a human couldn't do chest compressions for 3 hours, but also, would you normally want to do that? right? And then suddenly their heart started and they walked out of hospital 2 days later.
So this actually happened?
This actually happened in New York. A 40-year-old cab driver in New York.
So they were using this device in the emergency department?
Yeah, they had it there as a device. This guy keeled over, heart stopped in the emergency room, and they put him on the device. And the thing is, they kept him on it for 3 hours. So if you have a device that can do this, how do you know when to stop? That's all. See, there's also an ethical implication here.
Well, you'd know when to stop because when you're doing CPR, you're monitoring the patient's heart rate. If you're doing it in a clinical environment,
which you would be in an emergency room.
Exactly. You would actually have them strapped up to little electrodes that would be reading the heart rhythm. Huh. And you actually do stop very, very briefly to check.
Oh, the machine does that,
And you're giving them adrenaline and, it's not like when you're out in the street and all you can really do is just, compress the heart. So if they're using it in this context, then there must have been some evidence behind it for them to have started using it. You can't just walk into a hospital and start using a device without there being any evidence.
Yes, well, I'm just that's why I want to know more about the device. But let me tell you,
I'm so sorry that I haven't read your email properly because now I have to look into this.
Because the head of the emergency department in Newcastle said that they said they had people to do that, and I think that's a perfectly adequate response.
If you've ever had to give look, we all have to do CPR training every year as medical people, and I can tell you now that just doing it for a minute is exhausting. So if there was a way to get something who could do it for us and do it effectively, sign me up.
But I'm also thinking from the head of an emergency department, you've also got to slice up your budget different ways. So if you spend money on a machine like this, that's something you can't spend on something else.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you've got to kind of think long term. So if you're able to, if a device like this is effective.
But remember, it's not proven in this country.
No, but if it is demonstrated to be effective, it would have to first of all go through it. It would probably have to.
Is it Therapeutic Goods Administration?
It has to be registered with the Therapeutic Goods Administration.
That's what I was told.
Absolutely. And the thing is that if there is evidence to support it, and then they buy it, you kind of have to think of the long-term costs. So the costs on the health system of sort of looking after an unwell patient versus the cost of actually being able to rescue a patient without significant damage to their heart. There's lots of kind of health economics things around that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but actually you might be interested to know, because this just reminds me of this. Many, many years ago when I was working in London, I was quite a young little nurse at the time without a huge amount of experience. And I got a job just, for a few months as a sort of clinical trial sort of research nurse for something called external counterpulsation. And what this is they get these cuffs, Velcro cuffs, and they strap it around your calves and around your thighs and around your abdomen. And it pulses and sort of squeezes, and the whole body gets kind of squeezed. And the idea behind it was that it was supposed to help people who had angina. Now, I have a strong suspicion that it was complete woo. But I haven't gone back and checked up. That being said, if you ever want to go online and look up external counterpulsation and find some videos of people strapped to very strange medical devices, look that one up.
It seems to me like that would be for peripheral circulation.
No, it's actually, the idea behind it was that it somehow did something to the diastolic blood pressure. And for people who had what they call refractory angina, which is angina or chest pain that is resistant to medical treatment otherwise, that it was supposed to actually reduce their use of medication. I think it had a strong placebo effect because of the fact that I was sitting in the room with the patient for about 3 hours while they were strapped to this machine.
It's also known as the white coat effect.
The white coat. Well, no, the white coat effect actually generally has the opposite effect. It kind of has a nocebo effect, so people's blood pressure goes up when they see someone in a white coat.
Okay. And by the way, I had my blood pressure done this week, 110/65. How's that?
Very good blood pressure.
Yeah? Not too low, is it?
Not too shabby, I should. No, that's pretty good.
Good. Okay, well, I'll go and do something with it.
You can go and have a nice juicy steak for dinner.
Now, if you were to debate like Bill Nye did this week, a young Earth creationist, do you reckon you could take them on?
I don't know. Well, you see, they tend to gish gallop, and because it's not my area of expertise, I reckon I'd end up finding myself on stage looking a little bit worse for wear.
Okay. Look, also in the news this week, we had Ken Harvey resign because of how he felt about his university's conduct. What would make you resign from your job, any job? Like, what you go, that's it, you can take this job and shove it up your cerebellum?
Because I work in clinical trials, the major thing that I'm concerned about is ethics.
So someone fiddling the books?
Well, yeah. So research misconduct. So if I was ever in a situation in a job where I knew that researchers were behaving unethically, messing with the data, or, for example, if I worked in the Brzezinski Clinic in Houston, like I'm sure there must be some of my nursing colleagues who do, I would resign from a job in the Brzezinski Clinic, because that's a situation where I would not be at all comfortable with what they're doing to the patients.
Well, because the big question here, and it's a tougher question than what we normally ask, and how are you tonight anyway? What do you think of the great talk, wasn't it?
Yes, good talk, yes. Very interesting.
And do you think you could chuck a Bill Nye? Do you think you could take on a young Earth creationist or some sort of woo peddler on stage?
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that they have their mind made up, and it wouldn't matter what I said. It wouldn't change it. I don't think anything I could say could ever convince them.
And how do you think Bill went? Did you see any of it?
I didn't.
Okay.
Sorry.
But 10 points for having a go, hey?
Oh, yeah.
And what about Ken Harvey? Ken Harvey resigned this week because he went, no, take this job and put it in your parabellum, he said, or your quadrangle, because he didn't want it anymore. Could you see a case at work where you might do that with something, or any endeavour?
I think it takes a lot of guts.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it's a huge thing. Good on him. I think that he's definitely taken the right ethical stance here, and I'm quite shocked that the university didn't see that there's a conflict of interest. I think, yes, when it comes to these things, I mean, your behaviour and your decisions, you do what you would be comfortable seeing on front page news.
Which is what happened with Ken, yeah.
And absolutely, and he is totally comfortable with his decision, and I wonder if the university is.
I'm going to sit down there.
Look, Richard Saunders, his ticker can't take it. He has to sit down. But we meet a lot of people here on the Skeptic Zone, and we have a lot of listeners from all around the world. Look at him right now, and just by him saying his name, can you guess what country he's from? Hello?
Rob.
Where would you think he's from? Is he from North America?
Canada.
Is he from South America?
Uruguay.
No, okay, we're flipping over the cards. Where are you from, Rob?
Well, nobody ever gets it right, but it's Brazil.
What do they say? They say Paraguay, they say Chile?
They say basically everything but Brazil, actually.
but it's one of the biggest ones, I think it's the biggest one in South America, isn't it?
It is, and somehow it's just sort of a little easily forgotten. But
like Brazil. When I think of Brazil, I think of Volkswagens, the original air-cooled ones. I think of really, really good meat exports. They have really good meat. Brazilian meat is fantastic. And waxing. Those are the three things a lot of people think of.
Hopefully not in conjunction, I guess.
and you are in one of those created cities, like we have Canberra. You're in the capital, which is where? It's in the middle of nowhere, isn't it?
It's in the middle of a desert. It's called Brasilia, and it was entirely planned in 1960. It looks like it's from the future past. It looks like what somebody in the 50s would think of the future.
And because everyone must know the Brazilian flag. It would have to be one of the coolest flags in the world with that really day-glow map of the world. That is so cool. That is a cool flag.
Almost as cool as Libya's, which is just plain green, which I think is really bold, really, if you think about it.
It's just plain green?
It's just green. I think it takes a lot of cojones to just go with a green flag.
Yeah, well, I believe that was the original plan for the Irish flag, but they never got it together.
No, I can't really comment on the Irish because. But
what you can comment on what finds you here. Suddenly you're in Brazil. I suspect he's Men in Black. I think if you see some ancient aliens near any sort of ancient monument, you come along and you tell them no, you were never there. Is that your job?
If it were my job, I couldn't really say it's my job, but I'll tell you what, Maynard, I'll wink once if that's actually my job. And the podcast listeners will just have to guess whether I winked one or twice or not at all.
Okay, say no more. Wow, Eric von Daniken me off. I tell you what, it's quite a show here today. And how did you find an Australian podcast and start listening to it and enjoy it?
Well, I think it's very easy to enjoy, for one. I found it through the Skeptic's Guide. I listened to them first and foremost, I think, like most skeptics overseas. And they're a terrible gateway drug, really. So then I got to the Skeptic Zone, and I've been listening for many years without ever thinking that I would see Australia or any of you. Yeah. And now here I am.
Yeah, we have a more of a library format to the way they do there. We have reports from all over the place. We have different reporters and everything. It's a bit more disjointed than the Skeptic's Guide.
It is, but I think that's part of the charm as well, and it's got more of a recurring aspect to it, a lot of recurring characters in the Skeptics. Sorry, so.
Have you had a favourite report? Is there a report that's really stuck in your head from anyone, from Dr. Rachie or Joe or something I've done?
Well, honestly, I just love all of the yearly mind-body wallets or bi-yearlies or whatever. And honestly, I would like to go to one. I would like to come to Australia and see this event, because it seems... I agree with what Richard says. It does seem like a lot of fun and does seem like a worthwhile experience to see what's going on.
Look, yes, it was a lot of fun. The last one I went to, we did the final episode of Dirty Disbelievers, episode 9, where we all went along there, and Richard got called a rude word that started with C, and it wasn't clever. Yes. And Dr. Rachel almost got into a fist fight with people. It was a pretty wild time.
Wild time.
Was the word Christian?
No, that wasn't it.
I can't say the word. I'm sorry.
Because Richard's recovering from his chest infection. You probably hear from the intro and the outro of this. And you happen to land in Sydney when we're doing a Skeptics in the Pub. So. Now, a bit more about Brazil. You were telling me earlier that it's probably one of the most unskeptical places on earth. Is that because of the Catholicism, or what would you put it down to?
Well, I wouldn't say one of the most unskeptical places, because I haven't really been in that many places, but it does have a history of sort of a traditional unskeptical outlook, which I think is changing slowly, but it is part of our culture. I wouldn't blame it only on Catholicism or only on religion at all. I think it has probably very complex causes that I won't venture into. But it's everything. It goes from spirituality to a general willingness to believe things, really, to believe theories and odd ideas.
What's the woo that gets your goat? What's the one that you go, oh, not this again?
Probably astrology, just because of how widespread it still is, despite everything and despite being so obviously and so clearly debunkable. To just see smart people still talk about it and still give that usual defense of, well, of course you can't believe the newspaper astrology, but the good star chart, the really well researched, really solid star, that one's real. That one's important.
And also, I'd like you to give a call out to our international friends that listen to the Skeptic Zone that are out there and have never dropped us a line. Like, I don't think we've ever had any correspondence from Brazil, have we, or Richard, ever?
Over the 5 or 6 years we could have. Nothing really springs to mind, but we could have. We do have listeners there, because I can see the stats, of course. Yeah. So just let them know to drop us a line and that we don't bite. Could you tell them that?
Absolutely. They don't bite very hard. Maynard maybe a little harder than most.
No, but come on, look. It's worth travelling across the world to see this shirt I'm wearing.
Yeah. Maynard's shirt are legendary, and I almost grew up listening to legends of Maynard's shirts. And now I'm seeing them in person.
It's African.
Yeah.
Wow.
I really can't describe it in audio. You have to see it for yourself. You had to come to Australia and see Maynard's shirts.
Can you give a shout out to all our Brazilian listeners in Portuguese? That'd be really cool.
Claro, brasileiros estiverem ouvindo o podcast do Skeptic Zone, encorajo todos a vir para cá, conhecer o pessoal aqui pessoalmente, que eles são incríveis, e está na hora de a gente dar passo à frente no ceticismo no Brasil também.
I just felt like I was in Brasilia in the back of a Volkswagen taxi then, just for a moment, being charged far too much and being driven the wrong way.
And talking about skepticism.
So is there many Skeptics movements there? Are you a member of a Skeptics movement there?
I don't know of any. I don't want to say that there aren't any, because I'm afraid that somebody will listen to this in Brazil and say, oh, that's outrageous. You've completely forgot our foundational movement here in Brazil. But I don't know of any. I hope they're out there, and I hope I manage to find them at some point. But if there aren't any, there certainly should be. So hopefully this will be a start.
Look, it's been a great surprise, and it's a pleasure meeting someone from Brazil coming all this way and ending up in a really shabby, dark pub in Sydney. Yeah, look, don't think any worse of us.
No, I'll definitely try and be back whenever I'm ready to cross the world again. So thank you very much, everyone.
And who have we got here? We've got a visitor from far away.
Jo Alabaster.
And where have you come from?
I have come from the Blue Mountains.
Wow, so was that like a Concorde kind of thing? What was it like?
That was 2 hours on a train.
That's just like the Concorde. I mean, really, the New South Wales transport system is perhaps the best in the world.
exactly. It was fantastic. Luxury.
Now, of course, it's a big skeptical week, as we've heard. We've got a lot of big action happening in various parts of the world. How do you think Bill Nye went in his debate with Mr. Ham?
I frankly enjoyed what he had to say. I question whether... I'm not sure whether he was actually likely to convert anybody to his side. I shouldn't say convert because that's kind of the job of Ken Ham. I really enjoyed sort of the big long science smackdown. That was fantastic for me as an audience, but I'm not sure that it would have reached Ken Ham's fans.
Do you thought it would have been... I, as I mentioned before, thought it might have been better if someone from perhaps the atheist experience debated him, someone with a bit more of a theological grounding, and they could have countered the theological arguments.
I would have really enjoyed it if Aaron Ra had done it, actually. Yeah.
And what would you give Bill out of 10 in debating in such a difficult condition?
In debating, I'd probably give him about an 8. Yeah, it's a very difficult task. Some people are questioning whether he should have taken it on or not. I'm not entirely sure. It was entertaining as these things can be, I think.
Because Ken Harvey this week, of course, resigned. Big sceptical news there. Do you think you could ever see yourself in a job going, that's it, I'm going out there, I'm going to take my T-shirt and bleach it and leave?
I sincerely hope with just about every fibre of my being that I would do the same thing. I really very much respect what he's done and congratulate him for it.
Well, look, the two hot topics of the week is what do you think of the Bill Nye debate? How do you think he went with Ken Ham?
Well, I deliberately didn't watch it.
What's the go then? You're up in the Blue Mountains, you got TV.
I think I knew how it was going to come out. I was involved in a similar debate in 2005, and what I found was that the other side won, as I actually said in something yesterday, I said they actually put wheels and a trailer hitch on the goalposts so they could move them more easily to the next suburb. When you have these debates with these people, they make the rules up as they go along, and they're not honest. You've heard all their arguments before, but that doesn't matter. They'll just keep saying them. So I don't think anything's achieved by this sort of stuff. I think that...
So I think Richard Dawkins was right in don't give them a platform, don't give them any sort of credibility by arguing.
I think so, yes. I made the mistake, and I was on behalf of the Australian Skeptics, it was a debate on the Sydney Morning Herald's website. I was doing it by myself with people like Paul Willis and that on the other end of the email. They had a whole staff of people, what was in Answers from Genesis, all working on it, on writing their articles. And they were just dishonest. They just kept changing what they were saying. They wouldn't address the question at all. And so I know good that Bill Nye did it, but I really think that it probably... he wouldn't have converted anybody from the other side. As somebody put out today, they asked 22 people for their comments, and they were the same things we've been hearing for years. Why are there still monkeys if we evolved from monkeys, and this sort of nonsense. It's the same reason. Why do I have a grandfather when why have I got cousins if I evolved? It was the answer to that question. So we've been hearing that stuff for years. So I think that it was good of Nye to do it, but I don't think it's achieved anything other than probably to bring money to Ken Ham because he put the show on at his place.
And what about the other Ken this week? Ken Harvey. He's resigned. Well, how do you feel about that? Would you do that? Would you go, that's it, I'm going to take my Hawaiian shirt and put it in the dryer?
I think he did the right thing. There are several issues here. I think this particular one, if Swisse had simply said, we're going to give $15 million to La Trobe University for research, there wouldn't be an issue. But what they said was, we're going to give you money for research into our products. And so, therefore, it's tied money, and they're going to want results. And the results they want are people saying the stuff works.
But look, I haven't heard the exact argument from the university, but they would say we're going to do the tests and they're going to be fair and honest, and they're going to fall where they would fall.
Yeah, they'll say that. I'm not, and they may believe that. They may do that. But the fact is, it's a perception thing. It wasn't just an untied grant to a university to do research. It was specifically tied to specific products. And no matter how you play it, that's going to look bad from outside.
But don't pharmaceutical companies do this all the time? They pay to have research into their drugs?
Yeah, they can fund it, but I think it's got to be more open than that. They can say, here's one particular product, we want you to do testing, we'll do a contract research. But to say, open-ended, $15 million over so many years, and you're only going to research our products, is different to a pharmaceutical company going to a university and saying, look, we've got a possible new diabetic drug here, we'd like you to run the clinical trials for us. I think that's a different issue altogether. But I respect the man's principles. I think he did the right thing, and by doing it, he's given an enormous publicity to it.
Yes, it was right up there on the ABC News.
Yeah. I mean, if he just simply quietly said, I'm not going to do it, but what he did was he went public with it, because he already has a public image anyway and public persona. The story had legs. It went on the ABC, it went up the newspapers. So now the whole issue of funded, specific, targeted research has now come into the public view for examination. I think Ken did the right thing, and I think also the fact that he's gone public with it has raised this issue of how is funding done by these companies? If the universities are doing research, is that research tainted by the money that they're getting? In this case, I think it would have been, even unconsciously. But if it had been an untied grant, if they just said, here's $15 million to the medical school, I don't think there would have been any objection at all. I don't think Ken would have objected.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, show 277. And listeners around the world might once again spare a thought for some of those people in Australia. As I record this, the TV news is on in the background and I'm seeing people's houses burn down. More bad bushfires in Victoria, in the state of Victoria at the moment, and also warnings for emergencies in the state of South Australia. The thoughts going out to those people and those firefighters doing the courageous job at the moment fighting those terrible fires. And I can tell you it's quite a warm day here in Sydney, Australia as well. And it's so warm, in fact, that I think Fred the cat has found himself a nice, quiet, cool spot somewhere and is fast asleep. Sounds like a good idea, folks. Until next week, hopefully I'll sound a little better. This is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.